Now, the Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs Ministry wants to put an end to the deaths of initiates in the Eastern Cape. It embarked on an emergency visit to the province as the death toll rises. COGTA Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa says if interventions fail, he will consult with all stakeholders to consider a temporary suspension of the practice to address the underlying challenges. For more on this, we're joined by the chairperson of the Eastern Cape House of Traditional Leaders, Inkosi Mwelo Nonkonyana. Baba, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it this morning. Let's just talk about, of course, what has been put forward then by the Minister Velenkosini Hlabisa, just with regards to, closing down the practice itself. I mean, that would be absolutely sacred and sacrosanct to do, but it's something that seems would need to happen if we don't get to the bottom of all these deaths.
Well, good morning to you and good morning to the viewers. Thank you very much for having us. Indeed, Contralesa raised an alarm at the very beginning. And we're very, very happy that the government is responding positively to deal with this issue. Because we believe that if this custom of initiation of boys to manhood is administered properly by the institution of traditional leadership, assisted, of course, by our government, there can be no death. That is why, therefore, we were proposing that let's have an urgent meeting, because if we, traditional institutions, with our communities, agree on anything, nothing is going to happen in our communities. And again, if the government is also addressing the concerns that we have raised around legislation, and we're going to have to sing, as it were, from one hymn book and make sure that there's no death. More than 20 boys having been passed on is really not an ordinary disaster. It needs and calls for extraordinary measures. Hence, we were thinking that there must be an urgent meeting of all stakeholders to find a way. What can we do? Because as Contralesa, as well as the House of Traditional Leaders, as far back as 1996, we did actually conduct our own investigations and make our own proposals, which some have been actually partially implemented, not fully. That is why, therefore, we are calling that there must be an extraordinary measures that must be preceded, of course, by robust engagement by all stakeholders, so that we can really save the lives of our leaders of tomorrow, the boys, because no boy should be injured and no boy should actually be killed. And again, there's no option. We don't have an option that this custom must be banned. No, we're going to be vigorously opposed to that. But what we want a proper administration of this custom of ours to make sure that customs are actually being followed. Of course, the laws of the country must also be obeyed by all, including, of course, those that are primarily responsible, the mothers and fathers of these initiates.
Baba, just to ask the question, though, the Eastern Cape Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, MEC, Zolile Williams, says 253 young boys have passed away in the Eastern Cape from this practice since 2019. That is 50 every year. And I know you say you're opposed to, of course, closing the practice if that was to be the case. But if we're continuing at this rate, it would only be fair. We cannot continue to obviously have a practice that continues to kill people. So either closing it and ensuring that the practices are done correctly is ultimately the aim. Why is this still happening, do you think?
There are many, including, of course, the parents not obeying the custom, undermining the institution of traditional leadership, and of course the laws that needed to be tightened up. Because as I speak, both the law in the Eastern Cape as well as the law nationally does not actually make rather a provision for parents to be criminally responsible. Because many parents, yes, some of the boys are taken without their consent, but they do actually associate themselves with these criminals thereafter. And again, when our teams go to rescue these boys, they are the ones that actually raising alarms. And these boys actually fled to the mountains and to the forests. And again, we did make proposal as Contralesa that in the Eastern Cape, we do have the climate issue. Along the coast, it is dangerous for the initiates to be initiated during summer season. In fact, we were preferring that it should be conducted during winter season. And but in Maluti Mountains, that's Joe Gabi raised, we know that due to climate conditions, it is physically impossible for them to initiate during winter because of the snow in that area. That is why to them, during this period, it is conducive that they should actually administer this the initiation. So clearly, therefore, there is a need that we need to meet so that we deal with this matter. Because as far back when Kada Asman was still a minister, we did actually propose that the June holidays are too small for us to be able to conduct during Isilimela. Because in the Eastern Cape, those along the coast, it would be conducive for these boys to be initiated during winter. But the winter holidays are very, very, very small. And we're very happy that the Department of Education was actually amenable to address this issue. But they have not addressed that issue till today. That is why it is important for Contralesa, particularly myself as the leader of Contralesa, was said, well, let us have a pause here.
Yes. And, let me ask this question. Let me ask this question. Why do you think parents are associating, as you said a little bit earlier, with what you're calling criminals then? Are they doing it because it costs too much, or maybe the traditions itself are just too stringent? Have you found any reasoning behind that so that perhaps that is an issue we could then deal with?
Well, there are many issues, but our tradition is not, and our conditions are not so stringent. In fact, they are conducive for this custom to be administered properly. If custom is followed to the latter, then there will be no problem. But again, if the laws are actually obeyed, we think that due to intervention of our government, it is important that those laws must be obeyed. That is why, therefore, we need to have a look into all those things, because as far as we are concerned, if you are going to initiate a boy next year in June, you need not prepare in May, you must prepare now, so that there are actually preparations that must be done throughout. And again, we need to have traditional surgeons and traditional nurses that are accredited by traditional institutions and not accredited by the Department of Health or any other department. Because we know those people who are skilled to do this. And again, we need to have a structure, Amadoda and Daba. That is the men themselves who actually have undergone practice.
Should we get law enforcement involved?
Oh, yes. That is why then we were saying we must have, and in fact, the police are actually helping us. But they have got so much to do. Hence, we were saying, why can't we have traditional policing that we have agreed some years ago with the government, so that the traditional policing is actually put in place so that the traditional leaders can work hand in glove with their own traditional police. And again, the traditional issue of traditional courts, because all our cases, you'll find that they are struck off the roll, they are withdrawn, and they are not prioritized. Hence, we were saying to the Department of Justice, let us have a specialized courts to deal with these matters. Because there are other matters that are very, very serious. Grievous bodily harm that is inflicted. Of course, even murder, even culpable homicide.
That is
why, therefore, we're of the view that specialized courts can be actually be established. And again, we trained investigators, we trained prosecutors. Hence, the NPA is also part of the critical stakeholder in dealing with these matters.
They definitely need to be
really a comprehensive thing that we need to adopt as the country, particularly in the Eastern Cape, with a view to really step up this thing.
Sure,
because
sure.
otherwise, our boys are going to continue to die, and unfortunately,
couldn't agree more with you, Nkosi.
And the institution of traditional leadership as well as their government. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I couldn't agree with you more. I think a massive reform needs to be happening in this case, because the worry at play right now is not that anybody would want the tradition to go away. It is the amount of deaths that, of course, are happening, and that is the massive worry. And I think that's why the reform is so necessary at this stage. Baba, thank you so much for the time. We really appreciate it. The chairperson of the Eastern Cape House of Traditional Leaders, Inkosi Mwelo Nonkonyana.